So many issues have happened when we've come to do a car, like a new type of car or a rare car, and we can't read it with the order.
For months, the world had been watching and waiting. Every Sunday evening, millions of people sat down in front of their screens to follow the story of a man trying to do something that almost every expert in the car industry had said was completely impossible. The question was simple but enormous. Could a YouTuber from Leicester, England, really rebuild one of the most expensive and complicated cars ever made by human hands? Could he take a destroyed, written off, fire sale Bugatti Chiron per Sport and actually bring it back to life? Week after week, the answer remained just out of reach. Progress was made, then lost. Problems were solved, then replaced by newer and harder ones. The project grew bigger than anyone had expected, and the pressure on the team inside that Leicester workshop grew right along with it. But finally, after all those months of grinding work, the day arrived. The Bugatti Chiron per Sport rolled out of the workshop doors and onto a real public road for the first time since the original crash had destroyed it. The W16 engine, one of the most powerful car engines ever fitted to a road car, roared into life. The dual-clutch gearbox, a piece of engineering so complex that most mechanics on the planet have never even seen one in person, engaged smoothly and cleanly. The car moved forward under its own power. The team smiled. The cameras rolled. And for one brief and beautiful moment, it really did feel like the impossible dream had actually come true. But within the first few minutes of that historic first drive, the car's own dashboard began telling a very different story. Warning lights started appearing across the instrument cluster, one after another, in quick and uncomfortable succession. The traction control light began flashing without any clear reason. The electronic power control system threw an error code at almost the same moment. The airbag warning indicator lit up and simply refused to switch itself off, no matter what the team tried. The stabilization system found its own separate fault and flagged it on top of everything else. And then the handmade radiator, which had been carefully and painstakingly built completely from scratch by a man named Bob from a small welding channel called the Machine Shop, began leaking coolant onto the workshop floor before they had even made it to the end of the road. The coolant temperature gauge climbed past 190 degrees Fahrenheit before the cooling fans finally managed to catch up with the load being placed on them. The smiles on the team's faces did not disappear entirely, but they became more complicated. There was joy in the air, absolutely. The car was alive. It was moving. After everything that had been thrown at this project, that meant something real and something huge. But sitting right underneath that joy was a layer of doubt that was very hard to ignore. And watching at home, millions of viewers felt that same mixture all at once. There were problems on that first drive that went even deeper than the warning lights and the leaking coolant. There were issues that nobody on the team really wanted to discuss on camera that day, not because they were hiding anything dishonest, but because the implications of those particular problems were serious enough to cast a genuine shadow over the whole celebration. Inside the front section of the car, there was a broken crash sensor wire that had not yet been properly addressed. There was also a faulty battery interruption igniter, a specific safety component that could not simply be ordered from a supplier because the part was either unavailable or impossible to source through the normal channels that the team had access to. On top of that, there was a pyrotechnic fuse, a component that uses a small controlled explosion to cut the car's battery power in the event of a serious crash. And this fuse was not behaving the way it was supposed to. These were not minor cosmetic issues. These were not the kind of problems you could park to one side and fix later, without consequences. These were the exact safety systems at the heart of the entire debate that had been raging publicly around this project since almost the very beginning. Because these were the exact components that Mate Rimac, the chief executive of Bugatti, had warned about openly on his own Instagram page many months earlier in the year. These were the exact same systems that the Bugatti company had pointed to when they said that a car like this could never be safely rebuilt by a YouTuber working out of a private workshop. Matt Armstrong sat in the driver's seat of that car on its first drive with no windscreen fitted to frame, the wind hitting his face at full speed, the rebuilt monster alive and running underneath him, and he laughed into the microphone clipped to his shirt. He told the camera that the car was so fast he could actually feel the blood draining from his feet due to the force. And if you watch that footage carefully, You can see the precise moment where the joy he was feeling and the doubt sitting underneath it collided together in real time. The car drove. The car moved. The car was genuinely and truly alive after everything the team had been through together. But on that first drive, the loudest noise in that workshop was not the thundering W16 engine. It was the sound of every viewer at home suddenly asking themselves a question that Bugatti had been asking all along. Had they been right about this? And had anyone actually listened? To really understand why that single moment on the first drive carries so much weight in this whole story, you have to travel all the way back to where things began. The Bugatti Chiron per sport at the center of the saga originally belonged to a young man named Alex Gonzalez. On social media, where he has built a very large following over the years, he goes by the handle Zalex. He is a Miami-based finance influencer, one of the new generation of online personalities who have built their reputation and their audience by talking publicly about Forex trading, luxury cars, and a lifestyle that most people watching from their couches can only dream about. According to his own posts over the years, Alex turned a starting investment of just $100 into a personal net worth of roughly $50 million before he had even reached his 25th birthday. Whether every detail of that story is precisely accurate is a question for another conversation. What is clear is that he became wealthy enough, young enough, to buy himself one of the rarest and most expensive road cars on the planet. He bought the purple Chiron per sport because he wanted the most exclusive hypercar in his entire collection. And this was not just another version of a Bugatti. Only 60 examples of this specific model, the per sport, were ever produced anywhere in the world. It was designed as a more focused and track-oriented version of the already extreme Chiron, with every element tuned and adjusted for maximum performance. It was, by almost any measure, a genuinely remarkable piece of automotive engineering. And then Alex proceeded to treat it in a way that made a lot of people very uncomfortable to watch. Long before the crash that eventually broke the internet and sent this whole story spinning into motion, Alex actually stood on the carbon fiber rear wing of the car and performed squats directly on top of it. That rear wing, taken as a single component, is worth several $100,000 at standard retail prices. Under Alex's weight during those squats, the carbon fiber cracked. That crack was visible and real and documented. With the benefit of hindsight, it is now very easy to see that moment as the first warning sign that this particular car was heading somewhere bad. The actual crash happened later on the busy streets of Miami. From the dash cam footage that circulated online afterwards, and from the police reports that eventually surfaced in the public domain, the picture of what happened is reasonably clear. The Bugatti Chiron per sport drove straight into the back of a small K truck at significant speed. The front end of the car, designed to slice through air at over 250 miles per hour, folded in on itself like a paper bag hitting a wall. The headlights shattered completely on impact. The airbags blew open across the entire cabin simultaneously. The carbon fiber monocoque, the single-piece structural tub that forms the spine and safety cell of the entire car, took serious structural damage in the collision. The gearbox housing developed a deep crack along its length. When the insurance company was presented with the full picture of the damage and the projected cost of repairing it, they made a straightforward financial calculation and walked away from the situation entirely. They declared the car a complete total loss and arranged for it to be shipped directly to Copart, the well-known salvage vehicle auction company that deals in written-off and damaged cars. What happened next is exactly the kind of story that only makes sense when involved a Miami finance influencer with very deep pockets and a very particular relationship with the idea of risk. Alex took the full insurance payout for the crashed car as any normal policyholder would. And then he went back online and bought his own wrecked Bugatti back at the public Copart auction. The hammer fell at a final bid of $1.656 million. After all the auction house fees and associated costs had been added in, the total all-inclusive price for buying back his own destroyed car came out to just under $1.9 million. He now technically owned the same car twice over, once in insurance settlement money and once in the actual physical wreck sitting in a lot. And he had absolutely no clear plan for what to do with it next. That was a precise moment that Matt Armstrong's phone began ringing in England, and the entire story shifted to a new country, a new workshop, and a very different kind of personality. Matt Armstrong is a British YouTuber based in Leicester, and his channel sits at nearly 7 million subscribers. He built that audience over the years by taking on ambitious automotive restoration and modification projects inside a well-equipped professional workshop, and by sharing every step of the process honestly and openly with his audience. He is not a professional car manufacturer. He does not have a factory in France or a team of certified engineers trained on a single specific platform. What he has is real skill, a genuine passion for problem solving, serious tools, and an audience that has grown to trust him completely because he never pretends to know more than he does. When Alex's call came through, Matt flew out to Miami within days. He walked around the wrecked Bugatti in person, taking his time, looking at every part of the damage with his own eyes and his own experience. He shook hands with Alex, agreed on the terms of the project, and then arranged for the car to be shipped across the Atlantic to his Leicester workshop. He agreed to take on a project that the most powerful and prestigious supercar manufacturer in the entire world was already preparing to fight against as publicly and as forcefully as it could. Matt almost certainly knew that the road ahead was going to be difficult. What he probably could not have predicted in full was just how difficult, or how much of the difficulty would come not from the car itself, but from the company that made it. Because Bugatti's response to the news of this project was not quiet or subtle or behind the scenes. It was loud, it was deliberate, and it was designed to send a very clear message to everyone watching. The factory had decided that this rebuild was not going to happen, and they had the power to make that position felt in ways that went far beyond simply saying no to a phone call. The few days after the wrecked Bugatti arrived at the Leicester workshop, Bugatti made a move that demonstrated exactly how serious they were about stopping this project before it had properly started. The company flew an official technician all the way from France to Leicester at their own expense. This was not a friendly visit. The technician walked around the entire car with professional measuring tools, examining every element of the damage methodically and carefully. He shook his head at various points during the inspection, and then he delivered his verdict in language that one observer described as sounding more like a judge pronouncing sentence in court than a mechanic assessing a damaged vehicle. The carbon monocoque, the structural core of the entire car, was completely compromised beyond any possibility of saving it. The gearbox housing was entirely beyond economical repair. The cost of fixing the car using genuine factory parts alone, before a single hour of labor had been added to the bill, would land somewhere in the region of $1.7 million. If that verdict had genuinely been the final word, the story would have ended there. But Bugatti had not finished making their position clear. Within days of the official inspection, the unique serial number of this specific car was locked inside the company's global parts ordering system. This was a move with enormous practical consequences. It meant that no Bugatti dealership anywhere on the entire planet could order so much as a single windscreen wiper for this particular car. The vehicle had been effectively erased from the company's books. The only place it could now be properly repaired, according to the official position, was at the factory in Moulchiam, France, by the factory's own team of trained technicians, at a total cost that would come out to roughly the same price as simply buying a brand new Chiron from scratch. For Alex, who had already spent nearly $2 million getting the wrecked car back from the auction, this was an infuriating dead end. For Matt, it was a puzzle that needed a different kind of solution entirely. Alex was furious about the whole situation. Matt was outwardly calmer, but the people around him could see that his mind was already working quickly through the available options. The two of them sat down together and recorded a video that would go on to become one of the more talked about moments in the entire saga. In that video, Alex stared directly into the camera lens and delivered a very blunt ultimatum to Bugatti as a company, giving them exactly 24 hours to respond. The terms were straightforward. Either Bugatti unlocked the serial number on the car's parts ordering system and agreed to sell them genuine replacement components at fair market prices, or Matt and Alex would begin sourcing every single part they needed through alternative means. They would start three-dimensional printing components where necessary. They would fabricate parts by hand where printing was not possible. And they would document every single step of the entire alternative process and share it publicly with their combined audience of tens of millions of people. They wanted Bugatti to understand, in the clearest possible terms, that they were completely serious about moving forward one way or another. That video reached an enormous audience in a very short amount of time. And somewhere inside a quiet office building in Croatia, it reached somebody who had the kind of seniority to decide how the company would respond. The chief executive of Bugatti Rimac saw the ultimatum being made publicly in that video, and his response was not to send a corporate lawyer. It was not to issue a carefully worded press release through a professional public relations team. He picked up his personal phone, opened the Instagram application, and sent a direct message to a 25-year-old Forex influencer in Miami. What he wrote inside that private message, and what he then said in the public video that followed it, would go on to split the international car community almost perfectly down the middle. It would also reveal something about the chief executive himself that most of the people watching at home had no idea about. Something that would make his warning about the dangers of amateur rebuilds sound deeply, painfully ironic to anyone who already knew his real backstory. The chief executive of Bugatti Rimac is a man named Mate Rimac. He is a fascinating figure in the modern car industry, and his personal story is genuinely remarkable even before you take into account the fact that he eventually ended up running one of the most famous car brands in history. He is Croatian by nationality, born in 1988 in what was in the former Yugoslavia, and he is the founder of Rimac Automobili, the electric hypercar company that he built from nothing, and which eventually absorbed and took over management of the Bugatti brand in 2021 as part of a major industry restructuring deal. He is widely regarded as one of the most technically gifted minds in the car industry today, and the companies he has built carry a reputation for engineering ambition that is second to very few on the planet. When Mate Rimac first addressed the Matt Armstrong project publicly, it was in that Instagram message to Alex that opened in the kind of casual directness that characterized everything he said throughout this saga with the words, "Hey man, Bugatti chief executive here." After the private message came the public video, posted directly to his own Instagram account and watched by millions of people within the first week of going live. His message in that video was carefully prepared, measured in its tone, and at certain specific moments genuinely persuasive to the audience watching. He pushed back on several of the cost figures that had been circulating online about Bugatti service and parts. He said that the headlights that everybody on the internet believed cost $174,000 were actually closer to $58,000 in reality. He explained that you cannot simply three-dimensional print a Bugatti monocoque or Bugatti gearbox in a private workshop setting, because the tolerances and the materials involved are beyond what consumer or even industrial printing equipment can reliably achieve. He described in some detail just how few places on Earth have the right combination of equipment and specialist training to handle certain specific procedures on this car safely. And he warned, in plain and serious language, that if a rebuild like this was carried out incorrectly by people without the right expertise, people could genuinely end up being killed inside the finished car. All of that was a reasonable and coherent position for the chief executive of Bugatti to take. The safety warnings in particular were not unreasonable. Complex safety systems in cars like this are not the same as changing a set of brake pads, and Mate Rimac was not wrong to point that out. But here's exactly where the story takes its strangest and most compelling turn. Because long before Mate Rimac was a billionaire chief executive of anything, long before he was a man that Volkswagen had decided to hand the future Bugatti to, he was a teenager with a broken 1984 BMW E30 parked outside a small garage in Croatia. He had blown the original engine in that car during a drift session at a local track. He did not have the money to buy a brand new replacement engine. So he did what any determined, creative, technically gifted young person with limited resources and enormous ambition would do. He pulled a combustion engine out of the car completely and rebuilt the entire vehicle as an electric car, using components that were significantly cheaper than conventional automotive alternative. He rebuilt that same BMW around 5 separate times over following years. He set multiple international acceleration records in that very car. And he built the foundation of his entire global business empire on the exact same basic principle that he was now publicly telling Matt Armstrong was completely and utterly impossible. The man standing in front of the camera and warning a YouTuber that you simply cannot rebuild a complex car in a small workshop had become a billionaire by rebuilding a complex car in a small workshop. Whether you personally agree with Mate Rimac's position on the safety aspects of the Matt Armstrong project, or whether you side completely with Matt and Alex, that single piece of context genuinely and materially changes the conversation. It is the exact reason why the comments section under Mate's public video split almost perfectly down the middle, with one group calling him a responsible and principled corporate leader doing his duty to public safety, and another group calling him a straightforward hypocrite for saying publicly what his own career directly contradicted. There was no easy answer to that tension, because both groups had a point. The safety concerns were real, but so was the irony. While all of this public debate was playing out online, Matt Armstrong was back in the Leicester workshop, doing what he does best, taking things apart and figuring out exactly what he was dealing with. And what he found when he started pulling the Bugatti apart carefully, piece by piece, turned out to be one of the more genuinely surprising elements of the entire story. Because the image that Bugatti sells to its customers, and the image that justifies the extraordinary prices those customers pay, is built on the idea that every single component inside one of these cars is exclusive, purpose-built, and unique to the Bugatti brand. The marketing suggests something crafted deep in a private facility in the Alps, designed and manufactured specifically for this and only this car. What Matt found inside the actual car was considerably more complicated than that marketing image suggests. The first big discovery came from the airbag system. The knee airbag and the front passenger airbag inside the Chiron Per Sport carry part numbers that are directly shared with the Audi A3 hatchback. Not a similar unit that happens to look the same. The exact same airbag, with the exact same part number, as fitted to the Audi A3 that a university student might drive to a lecture. Those airbags are available from various suppliers online